Okay, so like imagine this, right? You're getting all dressed up, ready for a night out at the symphony.
Yeah.
Thinking fancy clothes, maybe grabbing drinks beforehand, a late dinner after, the whole 9 yards. But hold on a sec. What if the concert starts at like 7 p.m.
Ah,
or even earlier? That's kind of the weird trend we're going to be checking out today.
yeah.
This whole shift towards earlier concert times, especially with orchestras.
Right.
We've got a ton of cool stuff to look at, articles about it, interviews with people who run orchestras, and even some actual data on what audiences want.
Wow, that's fascinating.
What we're really trying to figure out is if this is just a pandemic thing,
Right.
or if it's something like way bigger, a whole change in how we think about time and,
Right.
going out.
It's a really interesting question. And what's even crazier is that this whole earlier start time thing, well, it actually has like historical roots. You'd think the 8 p.m. concert was, like a forever thing. But what we found says different.
Oh, really? Now I got to know more. Okay, let's just start with the basics. We're seeing this shift to earlier times like everywhere. And I'm not talking about just, a few minutes. The Indianapolis Symphony, for example, is doing Saturday night concerts at 5:30 p.m. That's practically dinner time.
I know, right?
And it's not just them. Big orchestras in Houston, Boston, Minnesota, San Francisco, even Portland, Maine, they're all getting on board with this whole early bird thing.
And get this, it's not random either. From what we've seen, it's like they're reacting to how audiences are actually behaving.
Hmm.
The data from before the pandemic compared to now, along with what people are telling the orchestras directly, it's pretty clear this is all about what people want.
So it's not like orchestras are just trying to be different for no reason, right?
Yeah.
People are literally choosing these earlier times with their tickets.
It seems that way.
But the big question is, why? Is it just because of, how we got used to things during the pandemic, or is there something deeper going on?
Well, the pandemic definitely had something to do with it. What we keep seeing in what we read is this idea of lifestyle changes. Like we got used to eating and going to bed earlier when we were stuck at home. And now, with more people working remotely, a 5:30 p.m. concert on a Wednesday isn't such a crazy idea anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I was thinking, it's not just about that, is it? It almost feels like there's a bigger change in how we see entertainment. Like Gwen Pappas from the Minnesota Orchestra, in one of the interviews we have, she talks about audiences curating their experiences. That really hit home for me.
Yeah, that's a powerful way to put it. I mean, think about it. We live in a world where we can get any entertainment we want whenever we want it. Streaming services, personalized stuff, instant access, you name it. It's all about having choices and being in control.
Right. And that whole mindset seems to be like spilling over into how we choose to go out. It's not just like taking what we're given anymore. We want to make our own experiences. And that includes thinking about time, place, and how easy it is to, fit it all in. So, how are orchestras, with all their like traditional ways, dealing with this new kind of audience?
Well, from what we've gathered, it looks like they're paying attention and they're becoming way more flexible. Actually, this isn't even the first time they've had to adapt like this. It's kind of wild, actually.
Huh.
This move to earlier start times, it's like going back in time, Back in the early 1900s, concerts would regularly start at 8:30 or even 8:45.
No way. Seriously, I always thought the 8 p.m. concert was like the classic, like it's been that way forever.
Nope, not really. They started doing the 8 p.m. thing sometime in the 80s,
Hmm.
and there was even a time when they tried out these rush hour concerts and some late night stuff back in the 90s and early 2000s.
Huh.
But looking at the data, it seems like we're going back to those earlier times. And this time, it feels like it's going to stick.
So it's like Back to the Future for orchestras, right? Only this time, it's all about data and what people actually want, not just tradition. Makes you wonder what was going on back then that's like happening again now. But before we get too deep into that, let's talk about what this actually looks like, like in real life. You mentioned the Indianapolis Symphony doing 5:30 p.m. shows. Are other orchestras trying out different start times too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The Portland Symphony, for example, they figured out that their Sunday afternoon shows had way more people, like 35% more compared to the evening ones.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
Makes sense though. Sunday afternoons are like made for matinee shows,
Very
right?
much.
But what about concerts during the week? Those are harder to go to, what with work and all that.
Well, the San Francisco Symphony found out that moving their weekday concerts from 8 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. was the sweet spot. Gave people enough time to get there after work or dinner without having to, like, kill time before the show started.
Yeah, it's got to be that perfect balance, right? No one wants to rush from work to a concert all stressed out,
Right.
but sitting around for an hour before the music starts isn't exactly fun either.
Exactly. And for people who do want that extra time before the show, they can always have a nice dinner or drinks first.
True.
The main point is that orchestras are realizing they got to be flexible, offer different options so everyone's happy.
Speaking of flexible, you mentioned this isn't the first time they've had to adapt to the times, right? What can we learn from like the times they tried new things before?
Those rush hour concerts in
Mhm.
the 90s, those are a good example. They were usually shorter, sometimes even without an intermission, trying to attract people who wanted a quick culture fix after work.
Like a symphony on your way home kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, those particular concerts didn't really take off,
Mm.
but they showed that orchestras were willing to try new things.
Yeah, that's good. Because let's be real, what works for someone busy in San Francisco might not work for a family with kids in Indianapolis, right?
Exactly. That's where this whole curating experiences thing comes in. It's
Mhm.
not just about changing start times. It's about the whole concert experience and making it something more people want to be part of.
So maybe more matinees for families, earlier shows for people who want a shorter night, and even some late night stuff for those who still want that classic late concert vibe.
Right, exactly. It's about recognizing that not everyone wants the same thing and
Yeah.
offering variety. And the Indianapolis Symphony, when they moved their Saturday Pops concerts from 8 p.m. to 7 p.m., guess what? More people went. They got a ton of positive feedback from people who were happy to get out before 10 p.m. and get home at a decent hour.
It goes back to that whole thing about wanting a balanced life, right? It's not about squeezing in as much as possible every night. It's about being mindful about your time and prioritizing your well-being.
Absolutely. And the Minnesota Orchestra, they've taken this whole flexibility thing to a whole other level. They've got some subscription programs with like 4 different time options: 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 7 p.m., and 8 p.m.
Wow, talk about options. But here's a thought. With all this talk about changing schedules and making everyone happy, are there any downsides? Are we losing something in the process?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's important to remember that not everyone's going to love these changes, right?
Mhm.
Some people still prefer those later times. The challenge for orchestras is to find that middle ground, make most people happy without making others mad. And of course, anytime you change things up, there's going to be an adjustment period. The Indianapolis Symphony, they had a few people showing up at the old time because they hadn't quite gotten used to the new schedule yet.
Yeah, that just shows how important it is for orchestras to be really clear about these changes, right? So no one's confused or disappointed.
Absolutely. It's not just about saying, hey, new times. It's about making sure everyone knows through the website, emails, social media, even announcements at the concert hall.
So what we're seeing here is like a bunch of things happening at once. Audiences wanting different things, wanting more convenience and choices, wanting more balance in their lives, and even like a little bit of history repeating itself. And orchestras are stepping up, becoming more flexible, trying new stuff to connect with people. It's pretty cool to see how it's all changing.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, what does this mean for like the whole future of live performances?
That is a great question. And it's a tricky one, too. As we move more and more into this world of like personalized experiences and entertainment on demand, the lines between traditional performance spaces and the digital world are getting kind of blurry.
It really makes you wonder if, like, all this stuff with earlier start times and being able to customize your experience, it's like, is it changing how we think about time and entertainment in general?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, think about it. We're constantly bombarded with information and like things demanding our attention.
Right.
It makes sense that people want more control, not just over what they're watching or listening to, but also like when and how they do it.
Yeah, like we're all becoming these, I don't know, like master planners of our own lives,
Yeah.
filtering out all the noise and just focusing on the things that really matter to us.
Yeah, exactly. And for orchestras, that means they have to get it that doing things the same way for everyone just doesn't cut it anymore.
Right, right.
It can't just be about changing concert times. It's got to be about the whole experience and making it fit how people actually live their lives now.
I'm curious though, isn't there a chance that in trying to please everyone, orchestras might lose some of their like artistic soul? I mean, the symphony has always been this big, almost like sacred thing. Does changing the times and making the concerts shorter, like, does that take away from that?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. And it's
Mhm.
something a lot of orchestra leaders are thinking about too. But here's the thing. Art isn't stuck in time, right? It changes as the world changes.
Mhm.
The symphony today isn't the same as it was like hundreds of years ago. It's always been adapting, and this is just, another step in that process.
So it's not about like giving something up. It's more about like a new chance for orchestras to reach people in different ways.
That's a great way to look at it. By listening to what their audiences want, orchestras can keep their art form alive and relevant for, years to come. And who knows, maybe these new formats and ways of doing things will actually spark some new creative energy, leading to different interpretations and a whole new appreciation for symphonic music.
It's like we're watching this dance between tradition and trying new things. It's exciting to see where it'll go. This whole deep dive has definitely got me thinking. I'm already looking at my calendar differently. Like, how can I be more intentional with my own experiences, not just with music, but with everything?
That's fantastic. That's a great takeaway from all this. We all have the power to, decide how we spend our time and what really matters to us. And in a world where there's always something vying for our attention, that's a pretty powerful thing to realize.
So, to everyone listening, as you go about your day, we want you to think about this trend we've been talking about. Have you seen it in other parts of your life? What are your thoughts on this whole idea of convenience and choice becoming so important? And most importantly, how are you, creating your own experiences to live a life that's both, meaningful and fulfilling? We really want to hear what you think.
And remember, this is just one example of how things change in ways we don't always expect. Stay curious, stay engaged, and you never know what amazing things you'll learn about the world around you and your place in it.